So I recently received, I'm on the regular email list for Politics and Prose, the iconic bookstore in Washington, D.C. And I like to get their emails because they kind of keep me current. All of these events that they hold at the bookstore with all sorts of authors of recent books.
Mm-hmm.
One of the emails that went out just recently referenced the death of Mark LaFramboise, who was described in the email. Mark was one of the best book buyers any independent bookstore could hope for. And so, given that the mission of this podcast is to identify and grill best practitioners to try to understand why they're so good at what they do in an effort to better understand the book in all its various forms, the owners of Politics and Prose suggested that I interview a colleague of Mark's. So we're here with Anton Bogomazov. Now, Anton, perhaps you could just give me an idea of what you do at the store.
I am the adult book buyer for the Politics and Prose branch stores, of which we have two. So our original store opened in 1984 in Northwest DC. And then a few years ago, we opened two other stores, one in the Wharf area, one in the Union Market area. So I buy books for those two places.
Okay. So perhaps to start with, you give us a bit of an idea of who Mark was.
Mm-hmm. So the funny thing about pronouncing last names, he was from Chicago, so he pronounced his last name as LaFramboise. I know you're in Montreal, so yeah. Mark was with Politics and Prose for about 25 years. He was one of the longest standing staff members. He was the chief book buyer for the main store, Connecticut Avenue store, because it's on the Connecticut Avenue, but it's the original store. I worked with him for about 11 years. So when I started, he was already the head buyer. And before then, I think he also did some other roles, but that was way before my time. So I can't speak to that. The buyer basically determines what your store has on the shelves. So
yeah, let's get to him first, though. Like, what was he like? Was he funny? Was he smart? I guess he was. What was he?
Yeah, he was a very smart guy. He was. He had a lot of connections within the book industry. So of course, his passing was basically that's like a big space left. That's a big space. Like that's one of the main staff members. Of the bookstore, and somebody who's been very well known in the book industry, sort of very respected. So it's not just like that the store is feeling the loss, but it's also we have to interact with publishers and sales reps for publishers, and a lot of people knew him from that sort of point of view. So it's been a strange time, like the past couple of weeks. So because it's just so many people sort of connected through him.
And I guess that'd be one reason why he was so successful, is that he was very good at networking. Is that it?
Well, the thing about being a good book buyer, it's hard to say why you're good. Like I saw this interview, I think, with Alan Rickman, and they asked him like, what advice do you have for actors? And he's like, well, I don't know, forget acting. It's
right.
Sort of cumulative. Like you get experience, you get, you pay attention to the news, you watch things, you go to art exhibits. It all kind of feeds into your experience, and that advice can be given to book buyers. It all feeds into what you do. I mean, you get better and better at knowing authors and books and what's being published and what's being read, but also it all does sort of connect to the larger world, what is being published, like who are the people who are getting book deals, or what topics people want to know about, everything is basically, so it's hard to say like what makes you somebody a good buyer. It is like years of experience. I mean, certain definitely acumen, reading widely, knowing your customers, being there for the customers. So it's all kind of this big thing that is very hard to just say like this is how it works. Like
yes, but Anton, that's why we've got you here.
yeah. If there was just a formula,
yes, of course, then everyone would be very successful.
Yeah, so he had a very good read on customer base. He was curious about books, interested. You can't read every book, right? It's not, and so that but you have to make decisions on what to have in your store, even if you can't read every book. So there is some help you have, obviously, from publishers and your sales reps and your other booksellers, etc. But it's the general love of all things book is an important driving force, and he had that sort of interested, curious about books, because you're buying for the store, and inevitably you're even buying for things you might not be that expert in, but you still sort of have to be interested in what you're bringing in, right? And you can say like he was say very good at knowing sports, for example. But maybe there was some section that you're not so cognizant with, but you still have to be curious about what people might want to read about that topic. It's a very curiosity required sort of position. You have to be interested. So
I just spoke with this brilliant illustrator. She illustrated Timothy Snyder's book on tyranny.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
Nora Krug is her name. Yeah. It became, after a while, it just became clear that to be a great illustrator, you need to be super smart. And it's kind of obvious, but it's, super smart people are super curious. Mm-hmm. And it sounds to me like this is the same thing. It goes across the board. But what about him in particular then? What was it about? He has to be good with people, obviously, too.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah, it is definitely. It requires you to be both a bookworm and outward facing. Can be challenging, for some people to do that. But I mean, he was good. He loved to talk to people. Definitely, customers would come and seek him out. So because part of what independent booksellers do very well is we will sell you a book. We will call it hand selling. Putting a book in your hand and telling you why you should read it. Or we're good at finding books that we hope you like. The success rate, I think, is quite high. And so he did love sort of recommending books to people and talking to them, and he definitely loved meeting with the publisher reps and sort of other booksellers, and so it was all like a combination. His smarts and ability to talk to people and years of experience. That's sort of like a winning combination, I guess, but that's a very hard one to find.
Yeah. What about the actual process then? So how do you go about your job?
Well,
what happens?
What happens is publishers publish books, and publishers create catalogs, which are now mostly virtual, obviously. Previously, they were paper.
I know. I collect publishers' catalogs. Old
Right. I mean, there's still some print ones. A lot are obviously virtual because that's just easier for everybody. And then the buyer looks at catalogs.
Yeah,
and
that's a big part of what you do.
Yeah, that's how you buy new books. So you buy months in advance, right?
Yeah.
Because publishers need to know sort of what the demand is, and often you have sales reps that are associated with the publisher. They can help you make decisions. They can tell you what sort of publicity you might expect.
So what, for example, they would say, we've got a big budget for this one, but not so much for this one. And that it?
There are certain titles that might be like more promotion is
Right.
Or a bigger book of the season, or like some big author, or it sort of varies. And you look at the catalogs, and that's when sort of the buying acumen comes in. You also take into account like what your store customer base is like and what they might be interested in.
So what's it like in DC? What is it? Mostly a lot of politics, obviously.
Yeah, that's definitely part of it. But even DC is you can have different reading tastes based on different neighborhoods. Like, so I buy for the branches, and I notice that there are definitely some titles that do differently in all three stores.
So give me an example.
So for example, like our Union Market sells a lot of science fiction.
And what's the demographic there then? What's that neighborhood look like?
Neighborhood looks completely different from what that neighborhood was 5 years ago. And so it's very hard to tell right now. There's a lot of new buildings in that area. It is one of the more heavily sort of gentrified areas in DC. It's a mix. There's also a big university nearby, so that kind of adds a different sort of slice of customers.
Sci-fi works there, but it might not work in another one of your stores.
It works in the main store. It may in the original store. Original store is quite large, and it's in the Northwest DC, and customer base is also very sort of educated and intellectually interested in many things. So the original store, I'm not saying that, say, our Union Market outsells the main store. I just mean based on, also Union Market store is very small. I can't even tell the size comparison, but it is basically one room. So for their size, that's what I mean. It's
okay. So how would one neighborhood differ from another, and what would you buy for? So give me an example of how that might work.
For our branches, I would buy in smaller quantities because of space. Our Wharf store is also attracts a lot of tourists because it's right near the National Mall.
So what would you get for them?
We carry a lot of sort of DC related things. And once again, original store carries all that also.
Yeah.
For example, the DC travel guides, always, or DC history, or DC themed things. But at the same time, there's a lot of people interested in new fiction, new nonfiction. We sell quite a bit of romance there. It's largely both different and both very similar. They're big enough that you have to think sort of when you buy, but at the same time, you never know. People will come and ask for all sorts of things that you didn't think were going to work, and apparently people want that. So there's always an element of surprise and an element of kind of guessing, or like glorified fortune telling, essentially, because you can't know for sure.
No, it's just like the publisher. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, you can't know for sure. You can only sort of control it to some extent by promoting it or putting it on display or making sure people know about it, But at the same time, you also can't control what something will either take off or people will not be interested at all. So
yes, yeah. So you're looking through the catalog. What is it that would, you think, stop Mark or you?
Oh,
Like
uh,
what is
well,
it that would arrest you and say, yes, we have to have this book?
there are certain things we absolutely have to have. There is a new Cormac McCarthy coming out. I mean, we have to, right? What we saw. Well, I can't really obviously speak for him. But some things you just say we don't have we might not have an audience for. Or every store is kind of different in what they think they will and will not sell.
What arrests you then? Obviously, there's all these other factors, but is there something that you always look for?
I tend to be very thorough, and I like to look at everything in the catalog just to see, because I'm also very much like I just want to know what's there, even if I don't get it. I just want to.
Well, you can always order it, right?
It was true, yes, and so especially for the branches, like I'm quite constrained by space, so I can't. I have to choose. I'm forced to choose by space considerations and other things, but I like to look pretty much at everything in the catalogs.
Okay, but you have to choose. So why do you choose?
That's a good question. Often you can see if it's something that you've never heard of. Like if we just take all the Cormac McCarthys out of the equation that I'm obviously bringing in. I mean, there's always, you can take a look at similar titles, maybe similar authors, similar themes that you sold or didn't, or your buyers are also human, and sometimes you're like, oh, this sounds cool, maybe we should bring this in. That's why, I mean, you have somebody who
knows how to find cool.
Well, you make informed guesses, and you also have the power to also say like, oh, maybe we should have this, maybe I do want this. Like a publisher can tell you more about what so all books come with some sort of description and cover, and so it's not entirely blind choice, but it is kind of an informed guess, and to some extent sort of your own curiosity, and maybe you think, oh, this sounds good. And that's also why I think that a lot of times, like, publishers want booksellers to read books before they're out. You do get early copies because it's good if booksellers are familiar with what they're selling. It definitely helps.
I guess the other thing too is, though, that readers can get whatever they want. They're in a way that obviously they're a book buyer as well. What you're doing is just trying to figure out which books you should get more of and put in the store. I mean, really, it's quite different now, isn't it? They can always just click a button and get Amazon to deliver it. What you're doing is, here's our space. So how does that thinking go?
Here's what we give you. We give you this wonderful thing of browsing and not knowing what you will find. And also, we will talk to you and we will ask you about your favorite books, and we will give you books that we hope will match you very well. And I mean, you can sort of get that online, but it is still not. There is an algorithm who will tell you what other people bought, but at the same time, we will not tell you what other people bought. we will sort of do a more personalized, oh, you liked XYZ, oh, we have a book for you. Even if you're completely floundering and you're going, I don't know, I just want to read something, and we will give you that. And we'll tell you what those things are. And browsing is still a thing people do. You come into the bookstore and you just want to see what's there.
What they're doing is they're looking at your choice. You're the curator. You've curated the big list, and here's your choice. If you're really cool and smart, this is what you would read, right? In a way.
or as I like to sort of call it aspirational read. People often want to, book to read, but they also look at books that they want to read them.
Yes, I mean that's exactly what goes through my head. The reason I buy so many freaking books is because I really want to read them. I don't know if I'm going to, but exactly. I aspire to having read them.
Yes, that's kind of a big thing. I think it's really great for people to sort of at least imagine reading these books. I think everybody who is into books, I think, has more books than they have read.
Yes.
But once again, even in my own house, I have things like, it's good I have this. Yes, we curate our shelves, and you come into the store and you browse what we curate, and we hope that you find something. I hope people do. So,
well, plus you're there to advise too, aren't you?
Yeah. No, that we love doing that. We love, all booksellers love giving people stacks of books. Here's the stack. You can go through them and choose. So yeah, that's sort of the most fun of that profession.
Why is that?
You get to talk about books to people who like books and want books. So there's absolutely nothing. It's great. It's great fun. It's great fun recommending books to people. People will come back often and will say, "Oh, you gave me this book and I love this book." It's like a self-fulfilling.
Well, joy. If they really loved it, and there are lots of them, that's why you're good, right? That's why they keep you on at the stores.
Yeah, pretty much every bookseller I've met, that's what sort of they love books. They love to talk about books. They're interested in different types of books, and they're very excited to give you a stack of them if you come into the store.
Right. Okay. What about this mattering? Why does it matter? Why do you think this matters?
The books, or book selling, or book?
Yeah, what you do.
What I do. Well, you can get all sort of high, and you can go and say like, "Whoa, we gatekeepers of intellectual whatever." But at the end of the day,
molding the public conversation.
Yeah. It's all, sometimes that conversation can. That's why it matters what we do. It's sort of, it's like asking people why they love something. It's hard to describe. Like, why do people read books? Well, people want to, I don't know, read stories or read about things, and it's like it's a good community in the sense of sort of like people who read, people who like books. What we do is I think in terms of our specific store, what we do is, yes, we give you a space to come in and look at new books and browse and get recommendations if you want. We also give you a space to come and hear about the books, because we do have author events every day.
You do. That's that's a big part of any bookstore's success. And the
bookstores are the most successful and interesting. Bookstores always do more than just put books on shelves, right? You are kind of a space also where you bring in people with other things. There's like author events is a big one. We've done author events for years. We do one event a day at least. We do classes. We run various walking tours and trips. We do all kinds of things that we have subscription programs. We have like book a month club. So we do all sorts of things.
Let's just get back to those catalogs again, if we could. Who does the best catalogs?
Oh, well, it's sort of hard to say. I mean, I think booksellers, I find we pay a lot of attention to publishers, right? And who they are and what they publish.
Which are the best catalogs that you must have some that you like more than others that are some are better. I know you don't want to get into trouble with anyone, but like which ones are better written than others, for example?
Oh, well, that varies widely, and like most all catalogs have some sort of copy, and I can't even sort of think of like in terms of hierarchy of which ones are better or not, because
that's no fun.
I'm just used to reading sort of summaries and like reading what the books are about, what they are.
Some must be more compelling than others, though.
Well, no, that actually I always take it sort of book by book kind of thing. It's like it's because every catalog has some books I could be more interested in than others,
True.
but still I sort of look at them anyway because I'm buying for not me. That's another trick about this profession. Like you do make buying decisions, but you're not making them for you.
No.
And so there's certainly a certain like personal touch involved, but at the same time you are trying to buy for somebody else that you don't know at all, and you don't know if they even gonna walk into your store and buy it, but they might. And so it's sort of you kind of have to just try. It's hard to say, like you have to have a lot of choices, but at the same time they have to be thoughtful, as it were. So that's what curation is, right? You have to give people a lot of choices, but at the same time you put thought into it. So I kind of go book by book. So catalogs, I don't really judge like this is a good catalog, this is a bad catalog.
Right. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, and so I sort of go by title, as it were.
What about the way they look? Can you judge by that?
They'll virtually there's like a bookstore industry-wide sort of system, and they all end up looking. It's the same like format. So it's there's still some print catalogs that are usually the art book publishers. Those obviously are could be more visually compelling, but
like who, for example?
Well, there's the distributed art publisher. They publish mostly art books.
Who's this?
It's DAP. They're Distributed Art, I think, Publishing. I might be wrong about the actual acronym. Specific art publishers could, their catalogs could have more visual element, but mostly it's all the format is kind of doesn't matter. And so so you that's how you buy new books, and then every day you just look at what sold sort of the previous day, and you make decisions on what number you should order, and that's much more sort of numbers oriented in terms of demand.
Is it that detailed? In other words, you make your decisions day to day, like you say, oh, look how many this book sold yesterday. Boy, I've got to get more in the shelves. So you can see pretty quickly how successful your choice was then. Every day you look at every single title that sold before. I mean, we obviously use like a point of sale system, but we do make individual decisions for every book, like what number we should bring back, or more or fewer, whatever. You can tell occasionally the day the book comes out, there's already demand. There might be some even pre-sales, so you kind of know, sometimes there's a bit of a gap, if the review will appear maybe a week later. So, it's all kind of collectively publicity, media, what interviews the author do, reviews, etc.
So all those things kind of influence, right? It's you can put a book on the shelf but at the same time, people will browse, but people also will know about the book if they look at reviews or social media or any of those things, right? Like how do you find out about books? So.
Yeah. And again, you'd see a bump on a sale of a particular book because of a particular review, obviously. And then you would see, oh, we sold out. You got to guess to see if they're still going to continue to sell. How many typically do you buy of each of the book? Again, that varies, I know, but.
Yeah, it varies widely. I mean, we could have tens of copies on hand for one book and only one of something else, right? And a lot of independent bookstores, that's how it is. Or if the stuff is displayed on the table, display fixtures, then those usually get obviously more copies. But yeah, I mean, there's often sometimes we'll come in and say, "Oh, I took your last copy off the shelf." I'm like, "That's fine." I mean, a lot of bookstores will only have one or two of most titles. It's just how it is.
If you see that there's a big move on one book, you want to make, how quickly can a supplier get you the stuff once you've ordered it?
Well, it also varies, and like supply, people, supply chain is like the keywords now. Everything is supply chain dependent. Yeah. It's sort of not often as quick as people would think it is.
Yes. So what does that mean? That means instead of 4 or 5 days, it's 3 weeks?
Well, publishers also differ, obviously, and it differs like where you get books from and whatnot. But no, 3 weeks is quite long. It's much usually less than that. But also depends where you're in the country. Well, we are in the eastern side, and it depends on like where the warehouses are and etc. So it's like there's a lot of variability in how quickly you can get certain things. You try to not run out of something that everybody wants, but it's especially in the past couple of years, everything is very uncertain, from printing times to shipping times to so a lot of things just like out of people's control. Yeah, no, you try to have what people want. That might mean having a bit more on hand so you don't run out. So that sort of thing. It's like individual bookstores would make their own individual decisions, as it were, to how they stock what they really need. So just kind of hope that you have enough.
So has it been getting better or worse or the same?
I mean, the past 2 years have been rough on independent bookstores, I think. I mean, on many people, obviously not. But we had to move all our events to virtual. We had to be shut down, closed to the public for a while. We only did shipping, or at one point we opened up to, you could pick up your book, but you couldn't come in. Now we have started having events again. That's a good thing.
Well, what about the shipping though? Is it response time? Has it gotten better or worse, or
to us, or us shipping?
To you, if you order a book, does it typically take 3 or 4 days, or does it take, like, how long does it take?
It can take anywhere from like 3 to 2 weeks, 3 days to 2 weeks. Yeah, this is the thing. Also, is like every title is different. It fluctuates.
Well, I guess that's the thing about books too, isn't it? They're unique products. So
yeah, I think it's sort of every industry, I guess, is different in how they get whatever it is they manufacture or make. So everything has been hit hard by the pandemic. So, but yeah, the events coming back, it's definitely helps.
And what about that, again, your role there, and getting back to Mark, do you get involved in the events at all?
Yeah, I mean, yes, definitely. You have to work with the events department. You have to have books for events. So it's all kind of collective decisions.
Like, for example, you would say we're gonna have this author coming in. You have to guess
Yeah, you have to get it again. You have to guess.
You have to guess how many books
Yep.
you want there. You never know how many you're going to
Yep.
sell. Is that it?
Yep. It's pretty, yeah, it's exactly that. You sort of, you once again, you guess, but sort of in a different context. You guess like, well, how many people can we expect for this event? And how many people do you think will buy this book? Definitely, like if you're a buyer, you work with events, at least at our store, we work with events staff. Guess collectively is what we do. I mean, like informed guessing part 2. So
Yeah.
it's how it is. It's sort of, I guess, keeps you on your toes, and also sometimes you just have to say, we have to get as many books and see what happens.
Well, the nice thing though is you can return them. The nice thing for you, it's not so nice for the publisher.
We are a strange industry in that, yes, we can return unsold stock.
So you're not taking the risk like the publisher is.
Well, you know, it still takes labor and shipping. I would rather sell a book than return it.
Yeah. Okay. So getting back to Mark, he was a very good guesser then.
I mean, you know, yes, it's, I mean, yeah, that's really one way of putting it, but also your guessing gets better, I think, as you get more experience with customers and books and authors and everything. So yeah, there's still guessing, but it gets more and more informed as you do it. That's the thing. So yeah, it's still sort of guessing, but it's not all that random, as it were.
Okay. And so he was also a fine curator of books then, I'm assuming. Yeah.
I mean, yes, he was, you know, he was kind of the brain behind what inventory we had. That's your bookstore buyer.
Anything else you want to say about, first of all, about him?
You know, it is, I mean, it's still strange. Somebody who's worked at your bookstore for so long and you saw every day, and who's sort of a very important person in terms of bookstore operations and its kind of image and its, I don't know, books. You know, it's very strange. It's a giant space. It's a giant kind of, I don't know, space that he left because of his role and what he did, but also just day to day. So yeah, it's I mean, it's quite a lot.
Yeah, this whole living and dying business is really weird, isn't it?
I know. Yeah, so yeah, he's missed, and he's missed by many people still. So I'm sure he'll be missed for a while within the store, but outside the store too.
And he's missed because, again, why is he missed?
Well, why do you miss people? I mean, they leave and they're no longer there, and you realize, oh, I want to tell you, something about that. Oh, yeah, I can't. And same with outside of bookstore contacts as well. And it's like, oh, and yeah, he's not there. So that's sort of the I guess that's why you miss people. You miss their input, you miss their sort of talking to them, and maybe advice. Yeah, so there's definitely like quite a bit of buyer experience and expertise that he sort of had in his person, and that's gone. So that's book cycle will continue, but it will, for now it's it's still a little strange.
Yeah. Well, thanks a lot for telling us about him and about and about your role.
I know, very very tricky answers. The questions answer the questions that don't have really clear answers. I know it's
Right.
so
No.
you do things right. So yeah,
You try to keep things just rolling along and people happy and coming back, I assume. Yeah, that's the big part of it.
yeah, just read books. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, well, I've been talking with Anton Bogomazov, who is a buyer for Politics and Prose branch stores in Washington, D.C. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Nigel.